Coming up on this episode of the Hockey Nuts, Steve and I recap all of the transactions from the past week, including transactions involving our favorite teams. Spoiler alert, all three teams were active this week. Playoff races are in full swing, and the teams that still have a legitimate shot at making the playoffs is starting to decline. We'll discuss where every team stands. We'll also discuss all the headlines of the week in a busy week of action around the hockey world. We'll have all the details, plus some college hockey playoff talk, the KHL Playoff Minute, and our picks of the week coming up next. This is the Hockey Nuts Podcast, Season 1, Episode 29, recorded on Wednesday, March 1st, 2017. Trade Deadline Day Madness.
Shut up and sit down.
Carolina will win their first game in the season series, which wraps up here tonight. The Caniacs are on their feet. They should be. This was a quality effort from start to finish. 13 seconds left in it. On a night where everybody is appreciated. You can play night. And the ambassador of the project, the local chapter here for the Carolina Hurricanes, who stepped up for the cause, is the winning goaltender. Eddie Lack gets the shutout. Carolina defeats the Ottawa Senators 3-0.
Severson holding. Both teams picking up a point. Now playing for a big second point. And breaking free is Palmieri to the net. And it's saved by Rutt to the rebound off the side of the net. Wow, there's your first big chance in overtime. Shea with a lead to Zibanejad. Scores! Rangers win it in overtime! Zibanejad with his first goal in his last 16 games wins it in overtime.
Final 30 seconds, 3-on-2. Spooner with Hayes. Matrano coming late. Spooner's shot goes off Goligoski's stick, bounces down in the corner. Chara lines up Krause, who's slowed down. Here's Marchand breaking in. The wrap, he scores! Brad Marchand! Phenomenal skating. The deke on Smith and then going around the horn to tuck it home.
Hello and welcome to episode 29 of the Hockey Nuts Podcast. Today's going to be a very special episode. It's our trade deadline episode. And I'm here with Steve. My name is Wayne. How's it going today, Steve?
It's going great. It's going great, Wayne. Good to be with you. This is going to be a packed show tonight. And you and I have been anticipating this for a couple weeks, and it's finally here. And I'm full of all kinds of excitement.
Yeah, as we record this, it's just after 6 p.m. on Wednesday, March 1st. And the trade deadline just passed roughly 3 hours ago. So we have all the latest on all the transactions, all the trades. And there is a lot to talk about tonight. So we're going to get right into it. But before we do, I want to remind everybody that you can get in touch with the show at feedback@thehockeynuts.com. If you want to send us an email, we have a voicemail box at 919-960-1718. And, of course, we do live stream the recording of our podcast every day on YouTube, or every week, I'm sorry. And I actually shortened the link on that, and we're at thehockeynuts.com/YouTube. And that will take you right to the YouTube channel if you want to watch us record live. And if you've been hanging around today online, I've been live streaming all day, streaming my reaction to all the transactions while you've been hard at work.
I love it, Wayne. If I could have been there with you, I would have. Long day for me, let me tell you. Long day. You don't want to know.
I'm sure it has. So So, and of course, we do simulcast the stream on Facebook as well. And I'm also simulcasting it on Twitch. So we've got a trifecta of live streams going on right now as we speak. So let's, the one other thing I wanted to talk about too. We have recently, and we talked about it at the end of the show last week, and if you didn't catch it, we have created affiliate relationships with a couple of companies now. And that is a great way if you want to support our show financially without actually having to spend a dime of your own money. There's two companies that we have an affiliate relationship with that when you buy products from these companies, a cut of what you buy will come back to us, and we will obviously be using the money to help offset the costs of running this shindig because there are monthly costs associated with it. It's not too expensive. Obviously, I've been handling it myself for the last several months anyway. So, but anything, we would very much appreciate all listeners if you use either of these two companies to use our affiliate links. And the two companies are Amazon.com and HockeyMonkey.com. And of course, HockeyMonkey.com, if you are a player or have a child playing, you might be familiar with this website. It's basically an online retailer for hockey equipment, and I can attest to it. I've been a customer of theirs myself. I've bought a lot of my reffing gear. I've bought through them, and some of my playing gear as well. And the prices there are fantastic. Living here in the Carolinas, we don't have much competition for hockey gear. There's really only one place you can go in Raleigh. They have a couple of locations, but there's only one company you can go to in Raleigh that sells hockey gear, and that is, well, new hockey gear anyway. And so there's really no competition for new stuff. There's a couple of places that you can buy used gear, but as far as new gear, there's only one place around here that sells hockey gear, and they know it, so they charge more for it. So I found that buying stuff online is a hell of a lot cheaper for me on that front. So HockeyMonkey.com is a good place to go for all your hockey gear. Amazon is where you can go for everything else. And again, we would very much appreciate if you use either of those two services to use our affiliate links, and that way it doesn't cost you a dime extra on your order with them, but we would get a bit of a kickback, and that would help us offset some of the costs associated with this podcast. We'd greatly appreciate it. And you can find the links on our website at www.thehockeynuts.com. And on the right side of the page on that website, you can get right to the links. I actually haven't loaded the Hockey Monkey links up on the site yet. I just confirmed the relationship this afternoon. But within the next day or two, I'll have that link loaded. But Amazon one is live, and you can use it right by going to our website. So very much appreciate it. All right, so now let's get started on talking about the headlines for the week. And I've got a couple of headlines. Basically, number one headline, obviously, is trades. And all three of the teams that we follow have been active over the past few days. As far as on the ice, the Bruins continue to be white hot, and the Canes and the Rangers are pretty much playing a lukewarm right now.
Right.
And the standings still remain to be tight at this point in the season, but obviously the buyers and sellers are now clear, and of course we'll update you on all the standings, and we'll even give you our updated playoff predictions based on all the things that have gone over the past week. And then as far as transactions are concerned, my biggest observation from today is Montreal has gotten beefy. I don't know if you've saw all the transactions, but they've added a bunch of players, and they're all over 6'2".
Yeah.
So Montreal has basically changed the way they're going to play the game. So, all right, let's get into the details. But before we get into the transactions, let's talk about how our teams have done over the past week.
Okay.
Go ahead and start with the Rangers. Yeah.
You want to start with New York? Okay.
Yep.
The week started out promising. After losing in that shootout to Montreal last week, we came back the next night in another shootout, and we beat the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I really, I felt like, this gives me some hope. That was Henrik Lundqvist winning that game, so he did pass Chris Osgood. He's now 11th on the all-time list. But we won that game in the shootout 2-1. And then the next night, the next game, we played was the New Jersey Devils, and that game as well went into extra time.
Mm-hmm.
The Devils tied it up late, and we went into overtime. And then Mika Zibanejad scored a very big goal in that overtime period. That was Antti Ranta winning that game.
Oh, okay.
So I felt like the Rangers, we looked good. Henrik's probably going to play the next game against Columbus. In fact, we knew that day he was going to play it because it was already announced. So the following day against the Columbus Blue Jackets, we come out on the ice. First period's pretty good. After that, it's a collapse. So we go back to being lukewarm for the week.
Yep. Because
we lost that game, and then we lost last night against the Washington Capitals 4-1 on home ice, which was not good.
And that was Kevin Shattenkirk's first game.
That was Kevin Shattenkirk's first game. He did play well, and we played a very good first period, but that was the end of it. We should have been up 2-0 at the end of the first period. And they took away a goal that we had on an offside call.
Oh wow!
So there's I don't know. We didn't deserve to win that game by no means, but the score should have been, I felt, closer than it was. So
yep.
But anyways, we're not playing like we were earlier in the year, and we don't have tomorrow night. We got to play against a white hot Boston Bruin team. So
yep.
We'll see how it goes.
We'll definitely see it. And it's in Boston too. So
yeah.
But anyway, as far as the Bruins are concerned, speaking of, the Bruins, of course, had their West Coast road trip, and usually that's when they just absolutely tank. They've always seemed to have trouble. Even going back to when I was a kid, they always seemed to have trouble when they head out on the road trip that takes them to the furthest teams away from Boston, which nowadays is the California teams, but prior to that was the Western Canada road trip. But they had, we talked about that game last week. They had San Jose. They had beaten them, and then going into this week, they went into Anaheim, lost 5-3 on the 22nd, and that was the first loss under new head coach Bruce Cassidy. And after that, the next night, they went into L.A. Of course, it's just a road trip across town. After all, they went and beat L.A. 4-1 on the 23rd. And fortunately, they got in there and got that game done because I think it was the very next day that they announced that Quick was going to be back. So I'm glad the Bruins got to play L.A. before Jonathan Quick came back, because him coming back makes them infinitely more difficult to beat. And then on the way back from the West Coast, they came through Dallas and just completely destroyed them 6-3 on the 26th. And then at home, their first game back from the road trip, they beat Arizona, pretty much going away 4-1 on the 28th. That game was very it wasn't much question. So the Bruins finished that road trip 4-1.
Yeah. Which
was fantastic. I'm thrilled with the result of that road trip. I'll take that any day and twice on Sunday. And then they have the win. They're starting to beat the teams now that they should be beaten, like Arizona. That makes me feel a lot better about this team. So we'll see how it is going forward. They're going to be facing a lot of teams coming up that have made a lot of transactions recently, starting with the Rangers this Thursday. I know they've got three more games against Ottawa between now and the end of the season. And they've made a bunch of moves, and they're looking real good right now. So we'll see how it goes, but right now the Bruins are hanging in there. They're still holding on to that third place in the Atlantic Division standings. So we'll see how they go. Carolina, on the other hand, has pretty much just feels like they've given up on this season.
Yeah,
because they've traded away a couple of their players, and they're continuing to struggle. This past week, they had a 3-0 win against Ottawa, which I loved because that helped Boston a little bit anyway in their quest to catch Ottawa. But then they turned around and lost 3-1 to Calgary, and then they went down to Florida and lost in a shootout. I think it was last night. Yeah, last night. 3-2 shootout loss at Florida. And I watched a bit of that game after I got home from work. So that was very disappointing because they had the lead at one point in that game. So. And a very light crowd at that Florida game. I don't know if you saw any of it.
No, it was down in BB&T Center.
Yeah, it was down in Florida.
That happens down there. I'm biting my tongue here, not saying anything about the Florida Panthers. So,
but I thought their attendance had been on a resurgence lately. But when I watched that game, that building only looked about half full, and that's a team. That's a team still in the playoff hunt. So.
Yeah. I don't know if there were many Canes fans there.
Yeah, I doubt it.
You know?
Yeah.
But if
maybe it's because they played the Canes. That's probably why there was a light crowd, because it's not not a high-profile opponent.
I know when the Rangers come to the game, it is packed and it is highly Rangers fans. I guarantee. My guess is over 50% of the people that are in the building for the Panthers Rangers games are Rangers fans. There's a lot of Rangers fans in the Miami area.
Yeah. All right. Notable games that have happened over the past week. Well, I didn't really pull up a list because I didn't want to dwell on it too much. Didn't want to spend a lot of time on it. But the only game that kept coming up over and over in my headlines was the Stadium Series game, Penguins-Flyers. Penguins came out on top 4-2 in that one. I didn't get to see that game. I had to work that day.
Yeah, I was disappointed. I was sorry to see Pittsburgh win that game, but they won. And what are you going to do? It's Heinz Field, and so they continue to play well. And look out! They're in the playoffs. They're going to be a juggernaut. You know, I don't know another word to describe them.
Yep. And now it looks like Rutherford he's come out and said he wants to go into the playoffs with those two goalies. So just in case one of them goes down, it's actually not a bad move.
No,
you got to take advantage when you got a good team that can make a run. You got to take advantage. That
I agree with you. They're really all Pittsburgh could have done, Wayne. Correct me if I'm wrong. Tell me what you think. But all they really could have done was traded a Fleury to someone of equal or lesser value so that they didn't mess up the cap because they're right at the cap.
Probably, yeah. I don't have the details in front of me, but probably.
Yeah. So I'm sure it's not hard to. I'm sure it was difficult to find someone to let that get that deal going, pull the trigger on the deal.
Yeah.
So that's what I think.
All right, so let's move on to all of the transactions, and let me pull up. I gotta pull up the most up to date list of all the trades because there's been a lot, and we will go in essentially chronological order, starting with the ones that came through today. And today, obviously, is March 1st. So the first one I've got, and I should have sent you a link to them to you on the. I'm at the capfriendly.com website. It's capfriendly.com/trades if you want to follow along with us. But the first one I've got is Blackhawks get Kenton Helgeson and a 2019 7th-round pick for Spencer Abbott and Sam Carrick. That essentially is a minor league deal in my mind. There's really no use to spend a whole lot of time on that one because we've got a lot. The only thing I would note on that one, Spencer Abbott is a former Maine Black Bear. And, of course, those two, Abbott and Carrick, ended up going to Anaheim in that deal. I don't know if you want to add anything to that one.
No, I agree with you. That sounds like just a trade among.
And there were a few involving American Hockey League players at this point. So, all right, next one I've got is Florida gets Reese Scarlett, and in exchange for New Jersey's Shane Harper. Again, another American Hockey League deal. We're starting off slow here.
Yes, I see that one.
Yep.
Again,
a minor league deal. Yep.
Minor league deal.
Yep. All right. First big one of the list, Pittsburgh gets Mark Streit in exchange for Tampa Bay's 2018 4th-round pick.
Yeah, that was an interesting deal there.
And why you say Mark Streit coming from Tampa Bay? Because his last game was in Philadelphia. Well, we'll get to that. So essentially is a flip deal. But yeah, what happens in this particular half of the deal is Mark Streit was traded twice today, in case you haven't figured that out. But this is the second half of that trade. And as part of that deal, Tampa Bay returns 47.7% of Mark Streit's salary. So that's how that one goes down. So it's Streit for a 4th-round pick in that one. Mm-hmm. And Streit added to Pittsburgh makes them even stronger than they already were. That's a nice add for them.
Yep.
All right, the next one I've got. Columbus picks up Laurie Korpikoski from Dallas in exchange for Dylan Hetherington. Yep. Hetherington is an American Hockey League player / junior player. He's a minor league player, so it's basically Korpikoski for a draft pick at this point.
Laurie Korpikoski used to be a Ranger, so I know a little bit about him.
Okay.
But that's many years ago. He played with Arizona, I believe it was, for a while.
Adding a little depth there for Columbus.
Yeah.
All right. Next one I've got involves the Bruins, and that is Drew Stafford coming over from Winnipeg for a conditional 6th-round pick. And I looked into this conditional 6th-round pick, and the way the condition works in this case is if the Bruins make the playoffs, this draft pick becomes a 4th-round pick.
Okay.
Instead of a 6th.
Okay.
So I think it's a pretty good deal for Boston. They're adding a player, a little bit of depth. They're a little light on wingers. Stafford's going to fit in nicely on the wing. He'll probably play 2nd/3rd line, I would expect, for the Bruins. So not a bad price to pay, either a 4th or a 6th, depending on whether or not they make the playoffs.
It's a heck of a deal.
Yep.
Yep. I think they got a steal getting Drew Stafford for a 4th-round pick. That's very good.
Yep. In fact, Stafford has, I don't have totals, but so far this season he has 13 points in 40 games with the Jets. But he has scored as many. It's been a few years since he's done it, but he scored as many as 50 or 52 points back in the 2011 and 2012 seasons.
Yeah.
So he's a former 30-goal scorer, former 20-goal scorer. So he's got 30 goals once in his career, 20 goals once, twice, 3 times. I see 3 times. 3 times in his career, he's scored 20 or more. So, so it's a nice ad for Boston, and without a big price tag associated with it. Now, I didn't check. He's probably going to be an unrestricted free agent. That's probably why they didn't give up much for him. But I haven't looked up that information. So much going on, I haven't been able to keep up with what's going on there.
Yeah.
In fact, let me pull up Cap Friendly here. I can pull up the Boston Bruins. All right. This is horrible radio, but that's all right. All right, so Drew Stafford will be an unrestricted free agent at the end of this season.
What's his cap hit?
4.3.
Oh, okay.
And the Bruins had enough room to fit him in. So
okay.
So the Bruins didn't give up really anything for that. So, all right, next one. Frank Corrado comes from Toronto to Pittsburgh for Eric Fehr and Steve Oleksy and a 2017 4th-round pick. So Frank Corrado looks like that is a trade. I'm looking up on that. Frank Corrado must be a pretty highly touted prospect. I'm confused by this one.
Yeah, you got me on this one. I don't even see this one on the trade tracker. This must be, is it?
This one came in late. His cap hit is $600,000. 23 years old. He has, let's see. Obviously, Pittsburgh doesn't have a lot of cap space, so they couldn't add any really big names.
Right.
But he's a minor league player, pretty much. And he's not even on their list yet on the cap friendly, so I'm not sure. He obviously must have time left on his contract. But anyway, Frank Corrado goes to Pittsburgh. Eric Fehr and Steve Oleksy go to Toronto, and a 2017 4th-round pick go to Toronto. In my mind, at first glance, without knowing details of all these players, I'm thinking that is a win for Toronto. So Toronto's adding a couple of players that they're going to need to make a playoff run. So, all right, next one is the second half of the Mark Streit trade.
Yes.
This is where he goes from Philadelphia to Tampa Bay.
Right.
And in return, Tampa Bay gets Valtteri Filppula. And a 2017 4th-round pick and a 2017 conditional 7th-round pick.
Philadelphia gets Valtteri Filppula.
Yep.
Correct?
Yep.
That's a very good trade for them.
Yep.
I don't know. When you watch Tampa Bay, are you impressed at all with Valtteri Filppula?
Yeah, he's definitely a good defenseman.
He's a good player.
Yeah.
Picking him up for Mark Streit, that's a great deal. I think that's a great deal.
And Filppula, and Filppula has one more year on his contract, so Philadelphia is not giving him up.
Right.
And what it does is it clears. I think this was a big move in terms of salary cap.
Right. For Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay cleared, I think Valtteri Filppula is a $5 million cap hit.
Yep.
I bet you. I'm guessing off the top of my head.
Yep.
But my guess is that's where he is.
Yep.
You have cap friendly pulled up?
Yep, $5 million even is what Filppula.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I pulled that right out of the top of my head, but that's a guess because Tampa Bay's in cap trouble.
Yep.
Okay, so they get rid of Valtteri Filppula, a very good player. Philadelphia brings him in. You're saying he's got a year left on his contract, which I did not know that.
He's got one more year. Yep.
They're going to keep him and try and work a deal.
Yep.
I guarantee you they will. Philadelphia needs him.
Yep.
And they trade Mark Streit. That's a great trade.
Yep.
Ron Hextall worked a miracle. That's a great trade.
Yep. And it's good for Tampa Bay, too, because it gets Filppula off their books. Now, of course, in return, they got Mark Streit. And the way they worked it is Philadelphia retained 4.7% of Mark Streit's salary. And what that essentially did is they were talking about it on the TV and radio, saying, well, where did they come up with that 4.7? What it does essentially makes the money even between the two players, Streit and Filppula.
Okay.
It evens up the money. But then Tampa Bay turns around and flips Mark Streit to Pittsburgh in exchange for a fourth-round pick in 2018.
Right.
So the end result is Mark Streit ends up going from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh, which obviously those two teams apparently don't talk to each other because they couldn't work out a deal.
As much as we hate the Flyers, Pittsburgh hates them even more.
Yeah, right.
No?
So essentially, they essentially make a three-way deal between these two trades to make all this happen. And Tampa Bay clears $5 million off their books, which they're going to need to re-sign. I think Jonathan Drouin's going to be a restricted free agent this year, a player that they want to hang on to, and there's one or two others that Tampa Bay have coming up that are RFAs. Let me see. We got Tyler Johnson is also an RFA, and Andre Palat. Yep. And Andre Schuster is also an RFA. Okay. So Tampa Bay's got some
a lot of work to do. Stevie Yzerman has got a lot of work to do yet. He's not finished, right?
No, he's not.
He's going to have a busy off season.
Yep. He's got some big names that are going to be under RFAs that he's going to have to do. So they were able to get Filppula off the books and clear up $5 million in cap space for next year. All right, let's move on to the next one. Ottawa gets Yuri Jokipaka and a 2017 second-round pick in exchange for Calgary's Curtis Lazar and Michael Koska.
Yeah.
This, in terms of money, is almost an even trade. But Lazar has kind of underperformed. He was a former first-round draft pick, and he's underperformed in Ottawa.
Yeah.
So I think Calgary's hoping a change of scenery will jumpstart his career.
Elliot Friedman said today he was happy to see that deal for the case of Curtis Lazar because it gives him a second chance to start over.
Yep.
You know, sometimes the situation that you find yourself in when it starts is not the one that you thought it would be.
Yep.
And for whatever reason, things don't agree. And that can definitely have an effect on your emotions as a player and your abilities and all that stuff. So I not knowing much about Curtis Lazar other than he is a first-round player and highly touted, give him a chance with the Calgary Flames, and there's your second chance.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, we'll see how he turns out. But if he turns out great, this could be a steal for Calgary.
I agree with you
for sure. If he comes back to his first-round form, anyway. All right, next one. Still today, Pierre-Alexandre Parenteau, or P.A. Parenteau is what everybody calls him, goes to Nashville for a 2017 sixth-round pick from New Jersey. Or New Jersey gets their 2017 sixth-round pick. So Parenteau obviously is a third/fourth liner. More depth for Nashville. It looks like Nashville's making a run. They've done very well. So
yeah, they have. I can tell you a lot about P.A. Parenteau because he played with the Rangers for several years.
Yeah.
Number one, in the shootout, he's deadly. He's very dangerous and very reliable. If we went to a shootout when he played on the team, he was definitely one of the three always.
Okay.
Number two, he is very good at distributing the puck. They had him a lot of times in tight situations. He's very good with his passes. Good player, and heads you up. You know, he's a positive guy in the locker room. So, but you know, he's a journeyman.
Yep.
When he left the Rangers, I know he played with the Islanders for a little bit. He was with the Devils. I could if I sit here and think about it, I could probably pull two or three other teams he played for since he left the Rangers.
Okay.
So, but that's the type of player. I think he played with Montreal for a little bit.
Yep.
So, but that's a good deal if he's anywhere near the player that he was.
If he can help Nashville in the playoffs, that'll be a good deal for them because they only gave up a sixth-round draft pick for him. So
I agree.
Good deal.
Is he a rental? I guess he's a rental.
He probably is. Let me pull it up real quick. P.A. Parenteau is an unrestricted free agent at the end of this year. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Next one, Kyle Quincy goes to Columbus in exchange for Dalton Prout. And Dalton Prout is going to New Jersey. So on the money side, fairly even. Kyle Quincy is a $1.25 million cap hit. Dalton Prout is a $1.575 cap hit. Let's look at New Jersey. Prout is got one more year left on his contract, and Quincy he's an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season.
Yeah.
So obviously a kind of a rental situation here.
Yeah.
Quincy's probably the better defenseman. They're both defensemen, but he's probably the better defenseman of the two in my mind. And he'll be an unrestricted free agent. Just a straight up even trade, or player for player trade. No draft picks involved in that one.
That's right.
All right, next one. Montreal gets Andreas Martinsen in exchange for Colorado getting Sven Andrighetto, and almost even money, $640,000 to $650,000. A lot of size and grit going to Montreal with Martinsen, and Andrighetto, I'm not familiar with him, but these are depth guys in both cases.
Right.
In that case,
Andrighetto is a third or fourth line guy for the Canadians, and I watched him play. I think they were looking for bigger things out of him, Wayne.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's move on to the next one. Justin Fontaine goes to Edmonton, and Taylor Beck goes to the Rangers. So, obviously, you're going to have a bit of input on this. Now, both of these guys are American Hockey League players, so this is probably more of a minor league deal than anything, but where the Rangers are involved there.
I'm not really sure about Justin Fontaine and how he's doing in Hartford. I know that I can tell you this. He's not been pulled up to the Rangers. They've not brought him up. I don't know if he's ever played an NHL game. If he has, I don't remember seeing him in the last few years.
Yeah, this is a minor league deal for sure.
This is a minor league deal.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the next one is also going to be a minor league deal. Trade of goaltenders, I believe. Mike McKenna going to Tampa Bay for Adam Wilcox, who will go to Florida. So, again, a trade of minor league goalies. Nothing too much to talk about there. All right, the next one is a big one. Jarome Iginla goes to Los Angeles from Colorado in exchange for a 2018 conditional fourth-round pick. And I haven't seen what the condition is on that fourth-round pick. It probably has something to do with how far LA goes in the playoffs. It may become a third or a second, depending on how far LA goes. But Jarome Iginla will get one more shot at winning a Stanley Cup. Probably his last. I don't know.
Listen. I listened to the NHL Network today, or the NHL radio broadcast today on Sirius XM on my way home.
Yep. And
they happened to get Jarome Iginla on the phone while I was driving.
Oh, okay.
And it was very interesting to hear his perspective on this. Because they brought up points like you're going to have to be you're going to be relied on to put the puck in the back of the net, and et cetera, et cetera. And do you think that you'll be able to make it around for next year? I'm assuming his unrestricted free agent and at the end of this year. And it was interesting. He said it's about a 50-50 chance that he will retire.
Yep.
He said that this was a very difficult year on him. Particularly with what happened behind the scenes at Colorado, and that he's looking forward to playing for Darryl Sutter, who he's been with before. He had a conversation with him, and they're looking forward to the next weeks ahead in the playoff run. But he would not say any more than he's not sure he's going to come back for next year. So this may be something where if they go far in the playoffs and he does well, he pulls out one more shot as the old veteran, comes back and does well, he may stay on for a year.
Yep.
If not, I wouldn't be surprised if that's it for Jarome Iginla.
Yep. And I think a lot will depend on, and he may not even decide right away after the season. A lot will depend on how far the Kings go. I guarantee you, if they win the cup, he calls it quits. But a lot will depend on how far or how he feels going into next year too.
I agree with you. And they may not make the playoffs. They have got a dog fight coming up this month of March to get in the playoffs with the Calgary Flames.
Yep.
It is going to be tooth and nail the whole way. So I don't. If they don't make the playoffs, I think it's the same thing as if he wins the Stanley Cup.
Yep.
He might not be back.
Right.
So we'll see what happens there.
And that, of course, that draft pick going the other way might just simply LA making the playoffs might change that 4th round pick into something higher. So I don't have those details in front of me on that one. All right, next transaction. Montreal, again, another another toughness and grit player, gets Dwight King from L.A. in exchange for a 2018 conditional 4th round pick. Dwight King, I've looked at him. He's going to be an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year. He's got a cap hit of 1.95, and he's definitely a size, grit, and toughness kind of player.
They're not going to be looking to him to put the puck in the back of the net.
No, that's not what they got him for. So, and we'll talk about Montreal here shortly after we get through all of the. They were very busy today, so we'll get through all the transactions and then we'll talk a little bit about their whole new lineup. The next one, Florida Panthers get Thomas Vanek from Detroit in exchange for Dylan McIlrath and a 2017 conditional 3rd round pick. Obviously, the best player in this deal is Vanek. When he wants to be. He's one of those players that seems to be a great player when he wants to be and invisible when he doesn't. So not sure I would want Vanek on my team, as talented as he is. He just doesn't seem to play all the time in that case. Dylan McIlrath actually played here in Carolina, I believe, if you remember. I believe he's a defenseman. No, he's a forward.
Yeah, he's a defenseman.
He's a defenseman. You're right. He is a defenseman. I thought he played here.
He played for the New York Rangers for several years.
Yeah, he did play for the Rangers. For some reason, I was thinking he played here, but no, he didn't. He did play for the Rangers, though, but he's more of a grit guy as well. So
is a guy, actually, quite frankly, I was sorry that the Rangers did not keep him at the first of this season, and instead they kept Adam Clendening, who's turned out to be a pretty decent defenseman.
Yep.
But Dylan McIlrath is a banger. He will fight. He'll get on the ice and has no trouble evening the score if that's what his duty is for the night. Yep. So Florida gets a banger, and a guy that might be their number 1 banger too. So
I get a severe thunderstorm warning just now. That was that beep on my phone, and I
just screwed up, Wayne. I said Florida gets him. Detroit.
Yeah, Detroit gets him.
Detroit gets him.
And then right after I get the severe thunderstorm warning, I hear thunder outside my window. So
it is literally a monsoon outside of my house. Right? I can't believe you can't hear the raindrops falling.
Oh, it hasn't hit here yet. It's on its way over here. I live east of you, and that's where it's coming from your direction. So
it is a big storm.
Good. So as long as I don't lose power any, we'll be podcast will be over pretty quick if we lose power. All right, let's move on to the next one. We're still in just today's transactions.
That's right.
Washington Capitals get Cody Corbett in exchange for, or from Colorado in exchange for Joe Canada, another minor league deal. Exchange of prospects. Another minor league deal. Colorado Avalanche get Brendan Ranford from Arizona, for Joe Whitney. All right, let's move on to the next NHL deal. Vancouver gets Nikolai Goldobin, who's also a minor league player, and a 2017 conditional 4th round pick in exchange for Jannik Hansen, who will be joining the San Jose Sharks. This was a clear sell move for Vancouver and a buy move for San Jose. Hansen will be added to their team, get some nice depth for them as they head into defense of their Western Conference title. And Hansen actually has another year left on his contract, so it's not a rental situation. They will have him for a while. All right, next one is another Montreal deal and another grind 'em guy. Steve Ott goes from Detroit to Montreal in exchange for a 2018 6th round pick. So I'm not sure what Montreal is up to here, but adding all these grit players. And then right before that, they made another deal, Brandon Davidson, who's another grit and toughness guy, from Edmonton in exchange for David Desharnais. Desharnais is obviously a much softer player, more of an offensive player than Davidson. But that was the first move that Montreal made to get tougher. So, all right, next one. And actually, the Davidson deal, even though those two Montreal deals were back-to-back, the Ott deal actually happened first thing this morning, and Davidson happened late last night. So we're actually into last night's trades now. Dallas gets Mark McNeil and a 2018 conditional 4th-round pick from Chicago for Johnny Oduya.
Yes.
And Oduya used to play for Chicago, has 2 cups with them.
Yes.
So he goes back to Chicago.
Yeah, and I don't know if his salary is any less than it was when he played with them the last time, and maybe they were able to save some money this time around.
Well, here's what's happening. Dallas is retaining half of his salary. So having Oduya is not costing Chicago much. It's 50% of the salary is retained. And Oduya will be an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year.
I think Chicago's going to look to try and sign him back.
So, well, if they can fit him in under the cap, they obviously
Yeah.
like him. They brought him back. And the reason he left was because they couldn't fit him in under the cap in the first place.
That's right.
So,
well, I heard Stan Bowman today.
Yep.
Live on NHL Network. His comments were, Johnny Oduya, normally when a player gets, and we had him 2 or 3 years ago, you would see some deterioration in his speed or skills, puck handling ability. It has not happened. As a matter of fact, Johnny Oduya is the same player with the same speed today as he was when he played with the Chicago Blackhawks.
Yep.
So that being the case, this is not a risk move. The Blackhawks know him very well. So they're getting back somebody, a known factor for them. And, they're probably not going to, if they look to keep him under the cap, they're not going to break down the doors to try and keep him. But I'm sure Johnny Oduya wants to stay with a winner like that. So I got it as it was a very positive thing, and Stan Bowman seemed to indicate that the Blackhawks are very interested in keeping him.
Yep. Well, and here's the thing too with the Chicago Blackhawks. The last couple times they've been in the playoffs, they've been essentially doing their playoff run with 4 defensemen. 4 defensemen are using about 90% of the ice time there, and they can't continue to do that. They're breaking these guys down. You've got obviously Seabrook and Duncan Keith as your top pairing there, and Halmerson, who's been injured, but they're projecting him to come back in a couple of weeks. And that with Halmerson, and then you got Brian Campbell there, and now you're adding Johnny Oduya. So you got 5 decent defensemen right there for Chicago. So that should help them. And then, of course, who will fill out the 6th spot will probably range between Trevor Van Riemsdyk, Michael Roosevelt, and Mikhail Kempny. So those are your other 3 defensemen that are signed to contracts there in Chicago. So it looks like they're at least, instead of going with a 4-man D core, they're going to have at least 5 anyway that they can rely on, assuming none of them get hurt. All right, next one. Again, from February 28th, New York Rangers get Daniel Catanacci from Buffalo for Matt Bodie. These are 2 minor league players. Nothing really, earth-shattering on that transaction. The next one involves our local Carolina Hurricanes. Hurricanes sent Victor Stahlberg to Ottawa for a 2017 third-round pick. I like this deal for Carolina. Stahlberg, although he's a decent player, as the Hurricanes get better, he's probably a 3rd/4th liner at best. Decent penalty killer. I know he's played a lot on the penalty kill for Carolina, but he'll be, of course, Stahlberg will be an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year. So this is a clear rental situation, and to get
he can skate.
Yep.
He's a fast skater.
Yep. He certainly is. So that will help Ottawa in their playoff run for sure. And for Carolina to get a 3rd-round pick, I like that deal for Carolina in the long term, even though it does nothing for them this year. But we agreed that Carolina is pretty much out of the mix now at this point. All right, next one. Detroit gets a 2018 2nd-round pick and a 2017 3rd-round pick from the Rangers for Brendan Smith. That one happened yesterday. You must have thoughts on that one.
Tickled to death with that one. Delighted. Once again, a pre-trade deadline day deal, and I think Brendan Smith is going to fit in like a glove. And now let me tell you why. I'll tell you why. You probably know this.
You don't think he gave up too much for him, though?
You know this. You're a smart guy. Brendan Smith is the college roommate, a Wisconsin boy with the college roommate of Ryan McDonough.
Oh,
so they
really? Okay.
those 2 together, okay? And Brendan Smith is it's gonna work out very well. Wisconsin guys do real well with the Rangers. I think I told you that.
Yep.
You know. So I'm very pleased about this deal.
Well, good.
Yeah.
I don't know. From a non-Rangers fan perspective, I think the Rangers gave up a lot to get him.
Well,
he's a good defenseman, though. He'll be a nice piece to add for the playoff run, but it looks like the Rangers are all in with this deal because Smith is an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year, unless they think they can re-sign Smith, which is possible.
Well, if they don't, they did. They gave up the kitchen sink for him.
Yeah.
Here's what I think. I think he's interested in New York, okay?
Yep.
And they couldn't make a deal to get Shattenkirk. And if you haven't, the Rangers were hot for Shattenkirk.
Yeah, they were.
They tried very, very hard. Jeff Gorton tried to get that guy in New York City, and it didn't work out.
Yep.
So this might have been, I can't get Shattenkirk, so I'm going to go after Brendan Smith. I'm telling you, they needed defensemen.
Yep.
And
his first game will be tomorrow night, right? Or did he play
that's
last?
right. Yeah. Debut against the Bruins.
So we'll see. We'll see firsthand how he does in his first game, anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah. If they don't end up re-signing Smith, I think they gave up too much for him. I think this third and second round pick is hinging on the hopes that Smith re-signs with the Rangers. So
just keep in mind the Wisconsin tie there and the former relationship, roomies with Ryan McDonough.
And McDonough might convince him to stay, yeah. You could see Smith re-sign before the season ends. If he likes it in New York and he does well, the Rangers have that option. Up until July 1st, they can re-sign him. Yeah. They own his rights. So we'll see on that one, on the long-term ramifications. But short-term, that's a huge get for New York. And speaking of huge gets, we're up to the Capitals. We're back into the 27th now. And the Capitals made a trade to get Kevin Shattenkirk from St. Louis. And also as part of the deal, Phoenix Copley comes to Washington. And then going the other way to St. Louis goes Zachary Sanford, Brad Malone, a 2017 first-round pick, and a 2019 conditional second-round pick. Now, this, to me, is the biggest trade of the week, in my mind.
Absolutely. This is the trade deadline deal of the NHL.
Yep, because Shattenkirk, in my mind, was probably the best player available of players that actually moved anyway.
Yep.
And then Capitals gave up quite a bit to get him, too. Brad Malone, now he's an AHL player, but he was playing in the NHL on the fourth line for Carolina last year. And Zach Sanford is a prospect. Copley is a American Hockey League player as well. So
that first-round pick, though, 2017, they just gave up their first-round pick for the upcoming draft in Chicago.
Yeah.
And that's a big
that's a lot to give up.
It is.
Washington's going for it. They think it's their year.
Yeah. You think that St. Louis will go down the list now with a deal like this?
Well, it seems to me with the trades that St. Louis made that they've turned themselves into a seller, even though they're sitting in a playoff spot. I'm confused at what St. Louis is doing.
Yeah,
I just don't know I just don't know what would, they made some trades where it appeared they were adding, and then others that this is obviously a big sell for them, but they're still sitting in a playoff spot. So I don't know. Maybe they're looking ahead that, if they get in, that they're probably only going to make it a round or two at best. So they just decided to sell and take a look toward the future. I don't know. I guess we'll see. If they make the playoffs, that'll be interesting.
Yes, it will.
All right, move on to the next one. Jonathan Dahlen, who I believe is Ulf Dahlen's son. I don't know if you remember Ulf Dahlen. He comes from Ottawa to Vancouver for Alexander Burrows. Yes. Or as us Bruins fans call him, Biting Burrows. Because back in 2011, he had the biting incident with Patrice Bergeron.
Biting Burrows.
Biting Burrows goes to Ottawa. And Bruins play 3 games against Ottawa in the coming weeks. It should be interesting. I think I heard through the grapevine that they're adding extra armor to the Bruins players' gloves just in case.
Yeah. Won't go around Alexander out there in the ice. Okay.
And Dahlen, of course, is a prospect. Right now he has yet to play in the NHL. He's playing over in Europe, I believe. I could be wrong on that. But he's yet to play, but he's a good prospect for them. So that's a straight-up trade, no draft picks involved in that one. And another big one that happened on the 27th, Jordie Benn comes from Dallas to Montreal for Greg Pateryn and a 2017 fourth-round pick. And that was the first move that Montreal made to get tougher on the week. And nice ad for them. And there was a big article on NHL.com how Jamie Benn has mentioned that he's going to miss his brother because they've played together for the last 5 seasons. So
he just never grew a beard like Jordie.
No, no, Jordie's got the big flowing beard. I would have been funny to see Jordie Benn land in San Jose.
He'd look more ZZ Topish with each game,
and have the triplet of beards with Joe.
I could see him joining forces with Eddie Vedder and ZZ Top reunite, and boy, I'm telling you, they'd have a big time out there in San Jose.
Yeah, there's some guys that are taking the playoff beard to extreme, so
a whole new level.
Yep. All right. Also on the 27th, Toronto trades gets Brian Boyle from Tampa Bay for Byron Froese and a 2017 second-round pick. Froese is obviously a minor league player, and the trade essentially comes down to a second-round pick for Brian Boyle. And Boyle will be an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year. So it's a clear rental situation. Toronto has obviously made it clear they're going to make a run for the playoffs.
Yeah.
All right, next one, and this one appeared to me as a continuation of a trade that happened earlier. I just lost my place. Here it is. Minnesota trades Mark Hagel to Ottawa for future considerations, and Hagel is a minor league player, so it seems to be a minor league deal for that one, and obviously they couldn't decide who to send Minnesota's way. All right, and now we're back to...
I guess it's to the 26th, right?
Actually, where are we? Did I lose my spot?
I
did lose my spot.
Arizona Coyotes and Martin Hanzal.
I'm sorry, the future consideration trade was... I was looking at one from earlier. That was just a mistake. Okay. Teemu Pulkkinen goes from Arizona to, or actually comes to Arizona from Minnesota for future considerations. Somehow I jumped down to another future considerations trade that involving Minnesota that kind of confused me for a second there. But that one seems to be a continuation of the next trade, which had Arizona getting Grayson Downing, 2017 first-round pick, 2018 second-round pick, and a 2019 conditional fourth-round pick, which I looked into the condition. That could go as high as a second-round pick for Martin Hanzal and Ryan White. Yep. That one happened on the 26th, and a 2017 fourth-round pick also goes to Minnesota. So if you put these two transactions together, you essentially have Teemu Pulkkinen, Grayson Downing, a first, a second, and a conditional fourth, which could turn into a second. And the condition depends on how far Minnesota goes in the playoffs. If they win the first round, that pick becomes a third-round pick. If they win the second round series, that becomes a second-round pick.
Wow.
So it could be a first and 2 seconds if Minnesota goes deep in the playoffs, and a couple of minor league players for Martin Hanzal and Ryan White, and a fourth-round pick. So, big trade.
A lot of picks, giving up a lot of picks.
Oh my God, yeah, and that has been the overwhelming sentiment since this trade went down, is that Minnesota gave up the farm for these two players. Yeah. Neither of these players are Hanzal and White are both nice pieces. They're good forwards, but they're not great.
Right.
I don't think they're worth a first and 2 seconds.
Nope, I agree with you.
So and that trade is definitely in the long term a huge win for Arizona.
Yes, it is.
So, and obviously Arizona are clear sellers in that one. All right, the next one, which took place on the 26th, Peter Budaj and Eric Cernak, who's a minor league player, and a 7th-round pick and a 2017 conditional pick go to Tampa Bay in exchange for Ben Bishop and a 2017 5th-round pick.
Yep.
So that is obviously a rental player situation. LA probably feels that Jonathan Quick needs a little bit of insurance back there. So what do you do to get an injury-prone goalie some help? you bring in another injury-prone goalie. And hopefully between the two of them, they're not injured at the same time.
Yeah, that's right.
LA really didn't give up a whole lot to get him.
No, although Peter Budaj's played awesome this year for LA, but he's tired. He's had to basically go it alone.
Well, and Tampa Bay has Vasilevsky. He's obviously the number one there, so Budaj will go into a backup role, which is basically a better role for him rather than trying to hold on to LA's as a starter. So
The thing that jumps out at me here is, again, Stevie Yzerman is getting rid of. We knew Ben Bishop was on the blocks. We knew it,
and he's a UFA too, I think.
Yep. They're getting rid of, what is it, $5 million, $6 million?
Yep.
Actually,
no, he might not be a UFA because I think Bishop was eligible to be. No, he is a UFA at the end of the season.
Yeah.
So we were thinking that Bishop would have to go because of the expansion draft, but which he could essentially be drafted if Vegas really wants him, but all they would do is be getting his rights. But he's ultimately a UFA. He doesn't have to sign there.
Right.
All right. Let's continue. February 25th, we had one trade, and that was Tampa Bay getting Stéphane Fournier for going from Phoenix, or Arizona, I'm sorry. Why I keep saying Phoenix. For Jeremy Morin, 2 minor league players. So very light day on the 25th. Going back to the 24th, there were 2 trades, and that was the Thomas Yurko trade. One of them was Thomas Yurko going to Chicago for a 2017 third-round pick. So Chicago's adding a nice depth player for them for their playoff run. Yurko is an RFA at the end of the season, so they don't have to lose him outright. He'll probably play, I would imagine, on the 4th line with Chicago. Maybe a 3rd line with them. So Detroit gets a nice third-round pick in return for him, and they don't have to re-sign him. The other one that happened on the 24th was a rather big one, was Patrick Eaves going from Dallas to Anaheim for a conditional 2017 second-round pick. And Patrick Eaves will be a nice piece for Anaheim on the forward line. He's a UFA at the end of the season, so that's definitely a rental situation. And Dallas with the conditional second-round pick, that's a nice thing to get in return for a rental.
Yes, it is.
So in the long run, that helps Dallas for sure. All right, going back to the 23rd, this will be the last trade we'll talk about in this show because it's the last trade that happened. All the other trades prior to this one happened, and you'll have to listen to last week's show to get the trades that happened prior to that. But this one happened on the 23rd, happened basically the morning after we last recorded a show, and that was the Ron Hainsey trade. Ron Hainsey goes to Pittsburgh in exchange for Danny Cristo, a 2017 second-round pick, and that was it.
Yes.
So
Pittsburgh picks up a good player there.
Yep. Ron Hainsey will help them. They've had a lot of injuries on their defensive core, and that will really help them in their defense of the Stanley Cup. Ron Hainsey, he doesn't have a lot of playoff experience. In fact, he doesn't have any playoff experience. 35 years old, been playing in the league for years, and has never played a playoff game. Of course, a lot of that time he spent with the Carolina Hurricanes. He's been there 4 years, and he was with the Winnipeg/Atlanta franchise for 4 years before that, and Columbus before that. So, and back then Columbus was no good either. So,
but barring injury, he's getting ready to get some playoff experience.
Yep, but he's a good veteran guy, and he's a good locker room guy too. I've heard nothing but rave reviews about him in terms of a locker room presence. He's a funny guy. This is a guy who's going to be an analyst when he gets done playing. Oh yeah. You're going to see him, as once he retires, he's going to be an analyst. He's got that kind of personality. So he's making a playoff run, hopefully. And I know I hate it for Bruins fans, and you hate it as a Rangers fan, but I wouldn't mind seeing, if none of our teams can win the Stanley Cup, I wouldn't mind seeing Pittsburgh win just to see Ron Hainsey get his cup, because he's that good of a guy. So, all right, that's all I have for trades.
That is all I have for trades, Wayne.
Ooh, that is a lot, too.
That is a lot.
Now, we've had a couple of signings, so we're still not out of the transactions. We've had a couple of signings that have happened over the past week. One of them happened today. Goaltender Michael Neuwirth and center Pierre-Edouard Bellemare agreed to multi-year contracts with the Flyers on Wednesday. Financial details were not released, but Sportsnet recorded Neuwirth signed a 2-year contract with an average annual value of $2.5 million, and Bellemare signed a 2-year contract with an average annual value of $1.45 million. annual value. Oh, the rain's hit.
Yeah,
Storm
it's
has
coming.
arrived. Yep.
Yeah.
Neuwirth said earlier Wednesday he was hoping to remain with the Flyers. He's in his final season of a 2-year, $3.25 million contract with an average annual value of 1.6, according to CapFriendly.com. And in 24 games this season, he's 10-9-1 with a 2.9 goals against average and .887 save percentage. Those are pretty rough numbers.
Yeah.
I hope Philadelphia is not signing him to be their number one.
I don't think so. I think they're still looking at Steve Mason.
Yeah, but they're just shoring up their number one guy. So that is what I have for that one. Now, the other one I have is Chicago Blackhawks on Tuesday signed defenseman Michael Roosevelt and forward Jordan Tutu to 1-year contracts that run through the 17-18 season. Financial terms were not disclosed. Each would have become an unrestricted free agent on July 1.
Quite frankly, I'm surprised Chicago kept Michael Roosevelt. He's old.
Yep.
And
I would imagine it's going to be they sign him to a cap-friendly salary. Mm-hmm. We don't have the salaries here in front of us, but I'm sure that'll come out in the weeks ahead. People weren't focused on signings the last couple days.
That's right.
There's a lot of other stuff going on. All right. So let's talk about who you think are the winners of the transactions that have happened this week.
Well,
I've got a few teams in mind. I've got Pittsburgh, where they've added Streit and Hainsey on D. Yep. Washington, obviously, is a winner with the addition of Shattenkirk.
I think the Philadelphia Flyers are a winner.
You think so? Okay.
Getting in the three-way deal, getting Valtteri Filppula.
Yep. Yeah, he'll help them. Even though they're probably not going to make the playoffs. I'll be surprised if they do.
Yeah.
I've got L.A. with Iginla and Bishop are clear winners to me. That'll help them in their playoff run. Florida added Vanek. Ottawa added Stahlberg and Burrows. And Minnesota, even though they gave up the farm, the future, as far as this season's concerned, adding Hansel and White, that makes them winners.
Yeah.
Because winners, I'm only thinking in short term for this season.
Right. I think that the teams that you have listed here, with the exception of maybe L.A., but L.A. could make the playoffs. They're definitely playing it out as if they expect themselves to be in the playoffs with trade deals like this.
Yep.
I think you're right. They've got to make the playoffs now. They have to deliver. LA has to make the playoffs.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They're basically going for broke by adding Bishop and Iginla. They're actually getting ready for a playoff run. So now, in terms of losers, I put down all the teams that were selling at the trade deadline as losers, and again, I'm talking about short term. In the long term, some of these teams are going to end up winners because of all the draft picks they added. But Dallas, Tampa Bay, Vancouver, Winnipeg, Arizona, Colorado, and Carolina all moved players out and brought in either minor league prospects or draft picks in return.
Yep.
So look for those 7 teams to be weaker to end the season.
Right.
And they'll probably all start falling in the standings. The other team I listed as losers was Montreal.
Yeah.
Now, the reason being, not because I hate Montreal as as a Bruins fan, but it seems to me that all the players that they added, and we listed them, and I don't need to rehash all the players that they added. Basically, all the players that they added are grit, toughness, and fighting, that kind of component to their game.
Yep.
They didn't add any scoring talent at all to their team.
And they need the scoring talent.
They do, but they have it. I mean, they've got some nice players that can put the puck in the net. But what that team has seriously been lacking all season, in fact, for a couple of seasons, is they don't have any jam to their game. They don't have that grit. They don't have any toughness. And obviously Montreal made some changes today to change their identity as, their team identity. But my question is, why would you do that a month before the season ends? It seems like something you would do in the offseason, not as you're heading into the playoffs. They're essentially changing their team identity in the middle of the season. So now they've got all these players that are third and fourth liners that are going to be playing with toughness and grit, but they're going to have to learn how to play as a team all over again. So I just think, I could be wrong, but I just think Montreal's going to struggle until they get used to all these new players. I mean, they added like 5 new guys to their roster, and they're all like third and fourth liners. I get that, but
how much do you think Claude Julien's input was a factor?
There's some of his fingerprints on this. It almost looks like, and I think I made the comment earlier today on the live stream, it seems like Montreal is trying to turn into the Boston Bruins.
Yeah, I mean, I see it as Julien comes in and they decide to do this.
Yeah.
I don't see it as if Julien didn't come in and Michel Therrien is still running that team, I don't see this happening.
Yep. So I'm curious to see what Montreal is going to do the rest of the season. It seems like Montreal completely changed over their bottom six and their bottom pairing on D, and they basically moved out some guys that aren't putting up points on the scoreboard, but aren't contributing in the toughness area, and they're replacing them with guys that, at the very least, they may not put up a lot of points, but they're going to be tough. So, Montreal is definitely going to be a tougher team to play against, and unfortunately, I won't get to see the Bruins play against them because they don't play each other anymore this season unless they face each other in the playoffs. But any team that has to play Montreal, they're gonna have some bumps and bruises for sure with some of the guys that they brought in today. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see. All right, now as far as the last thing we want to talk about in terms of transactions is how about some of the players that didn't move that were rumored to move. Now I've got a fairly long list here. Duchesne, Landeskog, Verbata, Shane Doan, Kulikov, Halak, Evander Kane, Marc-Andre Fleury, Brandon Perry, Cody Franson, Yuri Hudler, Michael Del Zotto, and Ryan Miller all were rumored to be on the move, but didn't ultimately change teams.
Yep. I think in Colorado's case, I think they're wise not to have traded anybody. This is a situation where they lost a coach. A lot. They've got good players, young players on that team.
And Duchesne and Landeskog aren't bad players, and they're still young. So
they're excellent players. Yep. And then you have Nathan McKinnon there. You've got some really good players in Colorado.
Yep.
I guess they'll keep Semyon Varlamov as their goalie.
Yep.
I wouldn't be surprised with that kind of add a few tweaks here and there. They could vie for a playoff spot. They really could. They're not a lousy slouch team. So I was glad that they didn't go. I really expected them to open up the floodgates and drop everybody.
Yep.
But in retrospect and thinking about it, it's actually pretty smart of them.
Well, it sounds like they were willing to move Duchesne and Landeskog. They just the price was too high. Teams weren't willing to pay it. And overall, this year, as opposed to past few years, the trade deadline day was kind of slow,
lackluster.
Yeah. They didn't see a lot of moves. We've seen busier trade deadline days in years past. So, and I think the upcoming expansion draft is a big part of that.
Yes.
And and teams are becoming smarter and knowing how valuable draft picks are and not giving them up as easily as they have in the past. Yeah. So it should be interesting, but now we're at a point where all 30 teams are set for the rest of the year, and they've got to run with the guys they have.
That's right.
Right straight through the playoffs. Now, I pulled up another article that Cap Friendly put out, capfriendly.com, and the rules around player recalls change now effective today at 3 o'clock until the final day of the regular season. And some of the notes that these guys put out saying that each team can now make 4 regular recalls moving forward. I believe waivers go away at this point until the end of the season. So they're allowed to make 4 regular recalls moving forward between now and the end of the season. Emergency recalls do not qualify as one of the 4 regular recalls. And then teams can begin recalling their junior players once those players' CHL seasons end. So they can add players at the end. And, of course, college players, college seniors, or any college player that declares that they're leaving, even if they're underclassmen, can sign with teams that own their rights as soon as their seasons end as well. So, and then a couple other notes during the period following the 3 p.m. Of the 40th day, immediately preceding the final day of the regular season, continuing through and including the last day of the regular season, no player may be recalled from loan to a club of any league affiliated with the NHL, except that a club may exercise 4 regular recalls. So this is the actual rule in the rule book. Mm-hmm. So I don't need to rehash that, but keep that in mind going forward, because I don't believe there's any more waivers anymore at this point. All right, let's move on to injuries now that our extensive transaction section is done.
Oh, it was good though, Wayne. I certainly was enjoying that part of the show. Good to rehash all the trades with you.
Yeah, my phone is going crazy because that storm is about to slam into us. All right, Arizona Coyotes forward Alexander Burmistrov left the ice on a stretcher after being hit by Boston Bruins defenseman Colin Miller at TD Garden on Tuesday. Burmistrov was skating out of his zone when Miller hit Burmistrov with 16:11 left in the second period of a 4-1 loss. Miller was given a 5-minute charging penalty and a game misconduct. Burmistrov, who gave thumbs-up sign as he left the ice, was taken to a hospital. Coyotes said he was treated and released. Arizona next plays at the Buffalo Sabres on Thursday. Burmistrov, who's 25, has 1 goal and 8 assists in 19 games with the Coyotes after being claimed off waivers from the Jets on January 2nd. He had two assists in 23 games with Winnipeg, so he's played better since he's been with the Coyotes, probably playing more. I saw that hit, and to me it looked like a clean hit. So if the league decides to take a look at this, because he got knocked out, quite frankly, during that play. If the league takes a look at it, I don't expect to see any additional suspensions to Miller in that one, because it just looked like a clean hit. Burmistrov just didn't see the hit coming.
Yes, I agree.
All right, forward Jesper Fast of the New York Rangers will miss 2 to 3 weeks with a upper body injury sustained during a 4-1 loss to the Capitals on Tuesday. Fast played 14:08 against the Capitals, but left the ice after a hit by Alex Ovechkin in the third period. Fast played 14:08 against Washington, but left... Oh, that's repeating myself in that one. All right, any thoughts on that one since he's a Ranger?
I saw the hit. Alexander Ovechkin gave him a good hit against the boards. It's a separated shoulder, Wayne.
Oh, wow. So he'll be out a little while then.
Yeah, it's not a minor injury. So it'll be, they'll be looking 3 weeks. It'd be great. And he's been playing well, Jesper. So he's one of those guys that comes in, does whatever he's told to do, rarely makes mistakes, a heady player, thinks well on the ice.
Yep.
We need him. So
well, hopefully he'll be back 2 to 3 weeks. He should be back for the playoffs, or at least a week or so before the playoffs. All right, Minnesota Wild forward Zach Parise and Jason Pominville were diagnosed with the mumps on Monday and are expected to miss at least 5 days. Parise, who's 32, and Pominville, who's 34, missed the Wild's 5-4 overtime win against the Kings at Xcel Energy Center. Minnesota's 3 games in the next 4 days, including the Winnipeg Jets on Tuesday. Wild coach Bruce Boudreau said that assistant Scott Stevens is also showing symptoms. Parise, who's got 28 points in 50 games, and Pominville, who has 38 points in 59 games this season. Pominville has 12 points in his past 9 games. The Vancouver Canucks also announced last week that several players, Troy Stecher, Chris Tanev, Nikita Trimakin, Mike Chaput, and Marcus Granlund, Anton Rodin, and Ben Hutton were all showing signs of having the mumps. The Wild played Vancouver on February 4th. It usually takes 16 to 18 days for symptoms to first appear after initial infection. The Wild said that players who have symptoms are being tested and isolated for a 5-day period. Team doctors also provided players with vaccinations. Several Wild players were diagnosed back in 2014, including current defenseman Ryan Suter, Marco Scandella, Jonas Brodin, and Christian Folin. All players received vaccines that at that time, including Parise and Pominville. Mumps is highly contagious and is spread by mucus and saliva, usually when an affected person coughs, sneezes, or touches surfaces. And I put in here, shake hands, but the NHL guys don't shake hands at the end of games. But they may see each other in the tunnels before and after games.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but they don't touch their lips. My wife says they drink out of the same water bottles. The players don't generally touch their lips to the water bottles. Yeah. They're usually squirting it. So, but who knows? So something to keep an eye on. All right, so let's move on to milestones and records and honors. We have just a couple this week. Winnipeg Jets right wing Patrick Laine, who recorded 15 points in 11 games, has been named the NHL's Rookie of the Month for February. Laine edged out Toronto Maple Leaf teammates Austin Matthews and William Nylander, as well as Pittsburgh Penguins goaltender Matt Murray for the honor. I keep forgetting Murray is technically a rookie, even though he's got a cup.
Yeah.
Nashville Predators left wing Philip Forsberg, Chicago Blackhawks center Jonathan Taves, and Calgary Flames left wing Johnny Gaudreau have been named the NHL 3 stars for the week ending February 26th. Forsberg led all skaters in goals and points with 10 points in 4 games, including back-to-back hat tricks, as Predators gained 7 of a possible 8 standings points to improve their record to 31, 22, and 9, and they're third in the Central Division. Boy, they've been climbing the standings, haven't they? Taves recorded multi-point efforts in each of the Blackhawks 3 games, scoring 9 points in those 3 games, as Chicago won all 3 games to improve their record to 39, 18, and 5. And they're second in the Central Division. Gaudreau recorded 8 points in 4 games to propel the Flames to the first wild card position in the Western Conference. And Gaudreau, some of those points came at the hands of the Carolina Hurricanes.
Johnny Gaudreau I'm telling you, he is a great player and is going to be better and better as the next year or two unfolds. I'm very impressed with his abilities. He's a great player. Of course, he was great in college.
Yep.
So it's not like he's coming into his own. He's picking up where he left off.
Yep. So if Calgary's going to make the playoffs, he'll be a big part of it.
Yep.
All right, and the last one I have is I'm going to keep it short, even though the articles in the show notes is kind of long. Claude Julien got coached his 1,000th NHL game last week with the Montreal Canadiens. Well, not 1,000th with the Canadiens, 1,000th overall. So most of those games were with the Bruins as head coach. So kudos to Julien for coaching his 1,000th game. All right, let's move on to suspensions and fines. We had a couple last week. Philadelphia Flyers defenseman Brandon Manning has been suspended for 2 games without pay for interference against Pittsburgh Penguins forward Jake Guentzel during the NHL game number 908 in Pittsburgh on Saturday, February 25th. That was the outdoor game. National Hockey League's Department of Player Safety announced on Monday. The incident occurred at 3:26 of the second period, and he will lose $10,833.34.
Yeah.
That's an expensive hit.
That is a very expensive hit.
And then an update.
Buy a used car for that amount of money.
I know, right? And these guys lose it just by not playing 2 games.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Of course, that's fucking around money for him.
Yeah, of course.
He goes into Domino's Pizza and buys pizza for everybody with $10,000 in his pocket.
Probably. Probably. All right. And the last suspension we have, or is actually a continuation of one we talked about last week, Antoine Vermette, whose 10-game suspension for violating Rule 40.3, which is the physical abuse of officials rule, during NHL game number 840 in Minnesota on Tuesday, February 14th. His suspension was upheld on Saturday by Commissioner Gary Bettman. Vermette had appealed the suspension. He said, "First and foremost, I have great respect for the officials and the integrity of the game. Also, I agree that I deserve a suspension. I should never make contact with an official. At the earliest possible opportunity, I apologize to Mr. Shandor Alfonso. I was trying to get his attention and was not trying to hurt him. However, using my stick was a mistake, and I accept full responsibility for my actions. I certainly hope my track record in the NHL will earn me the benefit of doubt regarding this incident. I feel a 10-game suspension is excessive and will be reviewing my options. I look forward to returning to the lineup as soon as possible." So that seems like that was put out by his agent, but yeah. Supposedly his words. Yeah. So I guarantee you it was written by his agent.
Oh man, that was good.
All right, let's move on to the last story I have is in terms of regular stories for the week is concerning the Vegas Golden Knights. Earlier today, they officially completed the acquisition of their team and now are officially joined to the National Hockey League. And in fact, they were able to do transactions today if they wanted to a point. On behalf of the Board of Governors, I'm delighted to officially welcome the Vegas Golden Knights to the NHL, Commissioner Gary Bettman said. Congratulations to Bill Foley, the Foley family, the Maloof family, and the City of Las Vegas and the Golden Knights fans as the team embarks on this exciting journey. So, and I say to a point, they were able to do transactions, but they were not allowed to get any currently active players because obviously if they pull in a player, the player's pretty much out of a job for the rest of the year. So they couldn't bring in active players, but they could bring in, if they wanted to, they could trade some of their draft picks for, unsigned college players or junior prospects, that kind of stuff. And supposedly they were in the talks, but nothing ever came out of it because some teams were eyeing that first round pick that they've got, which I believe they're going to be sitting, going into the draft lottery, they're going to be sitting in the 4th spot. Where they end up will depend on the lottery, but that's the draft pick that they're going to have. So they're going to be picking high in the draft this year. All right, let's move on to the HockeyNuts.com power rankings for this week. And I believe it's my turn this week?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, so I will go ahead and start at number 15. I've got Toronto in that spot. They've been winning a lot lately, so I put them in the top 15. They'll probably make the playoffs if Boston doesn't. I think the last playoff spot will come down to those two teams. Calgary is sitting at number 14, and they're moved up from number 19 on the week. And Boston, I've got moving up one spot to number 13 on account of the wins that they've put up recently. Number 12, I've got Nashville joining the top 15 for the first time probably all season.
Could be.
They've moved all the way up from 17. They've won a lot lately. I think 5-6 games in a row now. So they're in the top 12, and they're probably going to make a playoff spot at this point. Ottawa comes in at a number 11, same spot as last week. Anaheim moves down one spot to number 10. Edmonton stays put at number 9. Montreal comes in at number 8, up from number 10. San Jose stays put at number 7. And the top 6 is pretty much the same teams, although in different order. I've got the Rangers at number 6, moved down from 5 on account of the losses they've incurred. Chicago moves down from number 6 moves out to number 5. Columbus stays at number 4. Pittsburgh stays at number 3. Minnesota stays at number 2. Washington remains at number 1. Any disagreements with that?
I actually no. I think you did a good job.
Yep.
I think Nashville is playing very well, and the looks of it, they are going to make the playoffs. I'll give you a little tidbit. And this is off the beaten path of what you're talking about. But yesterday, the thought came in. People were saying, "Well, do you think Tampa Bay, if Steven Stamkos comes back, do you think they're going to make the playoffs and everything?"
Too late.
And they asked Johnny McClain from the old New Jersey Devil.
Yep.
And he said, I think they're going to run out of games.
Yep.
You know, there's 20 games. They have 20 games left to play, and they're 6 points, I think, right now as it stands, out of the playoffs.
Yep.
It's going to be very difficult for them to do it.
The problem is with them is there's just too many players between where they are in the standings and where everybody else is. There's too many teams that they've got to leapfrog. So that is ultimately going to be the problem for Tampa Bay. They're sitting in the 6th spot in the wild card standings. So they've got Philadelphia, Florida, Islanders ahead of them. Toronto and the Rangers, of course, are sitting in the 2 wild card spots right now. Mm-hmm. So it's tall order because they're sitting 5 points out of that 2nd wild card spot right now.
Agreed.
All right. So and of course, if your team wasn't listed in top 15, you can check our show notes for where your team lies. But I'm sure you probably have a pretty good idea if you're a fan of your team. All right, let's take a look ahead at the upcoming schedule for the week. Boston has the Rangers on Thursday night, and of course, you and I are going to be talking about that game over some buffalo wings.
Yeah, buffalo wings and quesadillas.
Yeah, that's right. And of course, they got the Rangers at home on tomorrow night. They've got the Devils at home on the 4th, and they've got Ottawa on the road on the 6th, and Detroit on the road on the 8th. Detroit's at home. I'm sorry. So the New Jersey game, the Detroit game are must-wins for Boston. And quite frankly, if they want to climb above where they are in the standings, they've got to beat Ottawa as well.
Yeah, I agree.
And we'll see where the Rangers lie. Carolina will get them out of the way. They're at Tampa Bay on the 1st. They're at home versus Arizona on the 3rd. And then both teams fly out to Arizona to play again on the 5th. And then they're at Colorado on the 7th.
Yes.
If Carolina wants any chance of making the playoffs, however slim they are, all 4 games being that those 4 games are against weaker opponents, quite frankly, are all must-wins. Carolina's got to run the table this week if they want any shot at making the playoffs this year.
Yep, I agree.
And the Rangers.
The Rangers, we, of course, play tomorrow night against the Bruins in TD Gardens.
Yep.
And then we come back home, and on the 4th, which will be Saturday, we're playing the Montreal Canadiens. And then we go on a road trip. The road trip continues after these first 2 games. We play the Carolina Hurricanes, and I cannot remember the 4th game, but I think it might be the New Jersey Devils. So we've got a 4-game road trip coming up. But for the rest of the season, the Rangers are mostly on the road. They do not have a lot of home games left.
Yeah, I've got them. I've got the Rangers at Boston, at home against Montreal, at Tampa, at Florida. This week.
But the Rangers, they are the number 1 road team in the NHL. So hopefully they can pull out some road victories during this span in March, where they're mostly on the road.
Yeah.
and I would be delighted to get 3-1 with this week, but we'll settle for 2-2 if we can.
Yeah. Some good teams that they're playing. Montreal and Florida are both on the upswing, so we'll see how they do. Now, as far as upcoming games this week that are circled on my calendar that's not involving those three teams, Penguins, Blackhawks play each other actually tonight. I'm going to watch that game when we get done tonight.
Yes.
Predators, Canadiens, that's the return of PK Subban to Montreal. That's tomorrow night. Also tomorrow night, the Wild and Blue Jackets, two really good teams right now. Maple Leafs, Kings are also tomorrow night. And then Maple Leafs, Ducks on the 3rd. So Maple Leafs are doing their West Coast road trip.
Yep.
So we'll see how they do out there. Blue Jackets, Senators on the 4th, Sharks, Wild on the 4th, and then Predators, Ducks on the 7th. Those are really the only games I've got circled this week. All right, let's talk some college hockey, shall we?
Let's talk college hockey.
Big part of the season coming up around college hockey. First of all, Maine finished their regular season with an overtime loss and a win against Northeastern. Both games were 5-4 was the final score. So that finishes them up at 11-19-4, but they finished with a dismal 5-15-2 in the hockey standings, which puts them 11th. And what that means for them is they now go into the first round of the playoffs on the road, and they will face number 14 ranked Vermont Friday, Saturday, and if necessary, Sunday in a 3-game series. And that is the 6 versus 11 seed in the playoff tournament bracket in Hockey East. Now,
I got to tell you, Wayne.
Yeah.
Here's my day timer. For those of you guys that are on streaming now, you'll be able to see this. I've written out the grid for the Hockey East tournament.
There you go.
And there it is.
There you go.
All the way through.
Yep. First 2 rounds are best of 3, and then the semifinal and the final are single game elimination.
That's right.
And that's kind of how most of the conferences go around college hockey is they play best of 3 series until they get to the semifinal, and then the semifinal is a one and done over one weekend. So, but that is how it will lay out, yes, for Maine. So Maine is at a point now where their season continues as long as they win. If they lose, the season's over. Now, they have guaranteed games Friday and Saturday night, but after Saturday night, their next game that they lose will be their last of the year. That's how it goes for them. So, all right. Now, as far as stuff that have happened around the country over the past week, again, there weren't many upsets over the past week, which tells you that the rankings are probably a pretty good indication of where these teams are going to end up at the end of the year. But on Friday night, number 19 Wisconsin played number 4 Minnesota and beat them 3-2. And number 13 Notre Dame played number 6 Boston University and beat them 3-1. And both games on Friday night were on the road, so even more to that. On Saturday night, unranked Sacred Heart beat Air Force, who's the number 17 team in the country. And unranked Michigan beat Ohio State 1-0. That had to have been a bloodbath of a game. Those two schools don't like each other. And Ohio State's the number 12 team in the country, and Michigan beat them. Michigan's unranked, so that tells me they are in a spot where they need to win to advance too. Merrimack, who's also unranked, beat number 15 Vermont 3-2. And then Nebraska Omaha beat North Dakota, who's the 16 team in the country, 3-0. And that was at North Dakota. That's a tough place to win a game. Nebraska pulled it off. Now, as far as the games upcoming this week, we've got number 16 Wisconsin at number 11 Penn State and number 3 Minnesota Duluth at number 8 Western Michigan. Both of those are 2-game sets. Neither of those are playoff series. Everybody else around the country is starting their conference tournaments this weekend. And, well, actually 4 conferences are starting conference tournaments this weekend. The AHA, the ECAC, the WCHA, and Hockey East all start their tournaments this weekend. And in all 4 conferences, in all 4 cases, there are teams that are going to be idle this weekend because of first-round buys. So most of the top teams in the country are not even playing this weekend. Now, with that in mind, let's take a look at the rankings for the week. And in fact, I'm going to skip the top 10 rankings for this week because they're probably not going to change from this week to next week. We'll revisit it next week on interest of time. But I will pull up the pairwise because that ultimately is what the teams are looking at right now. And in number 16 spot, in the pairwise rankings, you've got North Dakota. Number 15 is Ohio State. Number 14 is St. Cloud State. Number 13 is Wisconsin. Number 12 is Providence. Tied for 10th is Notre Dame and Cornell. At 9th is Penn State. Number 8 is Union. Number 7 is BU. Number 6 is Mass Lowell. Number 5 is Western Michigan. Number 4 is Minnesota. Number 3 is Harvard. Number 2 is Minnesota Duluth. And number 1 this week is Denver. Now, if your team didn't get mentioned in that group, you are on the outside looking in and will probably need to advance to your probably your conference semifinal to get in. Yeah. And even some of these teams, probably the 13 through 16, are probably in that same boat. That in order to really lock in a spot in the tournament, they're going to have to get to the conference semifinal.
Agreed.
So, all right. Let's move on to bracketology because, we've been looking at that a couple of weeks. And this is our, if the NCAA tournament started today, what would the tournament look like? And here it is. In the East Regional, which will be in Providence, you will have Air Force against Harvard and Providence against Union in the first round. In Manchester, in the Northeast Regional, you'll have Boston College against Minnesota and Cornell against BU. In Cincinnati, in the Midwest Regional, you will have Bemidji State against Denver and Penn State against Western Michigan. And in Fargo, in the West Regional, you'll have Ohio State against Minnesota Duluth and St. Cloud State versus UMass Lowell. So that is how the bracket looks this week. Of course, that will change as we go forward. All right. You have anything else to add to our college hockey segment? We're keeping it short.
Nothing to add.
In interest in time. We'll talk more about college hockey more in depth as we get closer to the bigger games, especially the semifinal and final series of the conference tournaments, and then, of course, the national tournament. All right, let's move on to our KHL Minute then. And you want to go ahead and give your Admiral update?
Yes, I'll give an Admiral update, which is my KHL Minute for the week.
All right.
I think all the teams in the Western Conference in the KHL, if I'm not mistaken, have now won their first round series.
Yes, they have.
And
it's all the higher ranked teams, too.
That's correct. They're lining up to play the second round.
Yep.
And I don't have those pairings yet, but I know CSKA and SKA both won.
It'll be CSKA against Lokomotiv and SKA against Dynamo Moscow.
Okay. That'll be interesting. That'll be a good second round matchup. In the East, though, it's all tied. Each series is 2-2, which I think you and I both agreed is kind of excuse me, that's wrong.
No, your Admiral series.
Magnitogorsk is 3-1 over Kunlun.
Right, and AK Bars is also 3-1 over Salavat
Ulayev. Yeah, but the other two series are 2-2.
The other two series are 2-2. Yep.
But they did, by the way, Kunlun did beat Magnitogorsk in Beijing. I don't know if you saw that the other night, but the first playoff game ever played in Beijing, and they won. So kudos to Kunlun.
Yep.
But Admiral, the title of the article is the WRIGHT moment for Admiral. Admiral Vladivostok tied the series with heavily favored Avangard Omsk with a 3-2 overtime victory inspired by a fantastic goal from former Avangard graduate Maxim Kazakov. The game-winning goal was scored by a gentleman named Wright, and I do not have his first name. But they won 3-2 in overtime. The series now shifts back to Omsk, tied 2-2. And Wayne, I don't know if they do it 2-2-1-1-1 or if it is 2-2. And then
2-3-2 would be the other way they do it. Yeah. I'm not sure exactly how they're doing that.
I think it's 2-2-1-1-1, but. Anyways, it goes back to Omsk where they will play. Ironically, Maxim Kazakov, the Admiral's scoring ace, who has scored in every playoff game this season, is a former Avangard Omsk forward who learned his trade there. In 4 playoff games this season, Kazakov has 5 goals to lead the Admirals in scoring. So they are getting beat by a former player, and I wonder if that continues. It's kind of interesting. He's got 5 games in 4 5 goals in 4 games. Would be great to see Admiral luckily get through and win this series. If they do, they get to play the wonderful Magnitogorsk squad, and so it'll be
the defending champions, right?
Yeah. Sergei Mozyakin served up to Sergei Mozyakin,
who got his thousandth point, by the way, this week too.
Yes. So, anyways, that is my pick of the week, and we look forward to hearing about the conclusion of that series next week.
All right. Well, my story is a bit of a it's kind of a downer actually. On the morning of 28th of February, the hockey world heard the sad news that Vladimir Petrov, one of the greatest forwards in the history of the game, had passed away, a mere 4 months short of his 70th birthday. Petrov achieved sporting immortality as part of a legendary offensive line. He was a man who made a history and helped shape an entire era. It was no secret that Petrov was ill, but from his hospital bed, he keenly followed the fortunes of his beloved CSKA. I made a call to him on eve. This is the writer of the article. On the eve of Army Men's 70th anniversary. A faint but nonetheless firm voice reminded me that he was born only a few months after the founding of his former club and was looking forward to marking his own significant milestone. My career as a player and coach went so quickly, he said, but my hopes are the same as they always were. I want our national team to triumph at the Olympics and World Championships, and I hope CSKA will lift the Gagarin Cup. I was lucky that I had the chance to play with some outstanding people. The emergence of players like Tretiak, Karlamov, Mikhailov, Maltsev, Gusev, Vasiliev, and Luchenko, plus those superb coaches, Chernishev, Tarasov, and Tikhonov, such greats did not appear by accident. I think we were destined to see this tradition continue. Yeah. After a few months of reflecting on a proud past, Petrov casually mentioned that his illness would prevent him from attending CSKA's birthday celebrations. Even as he entered his final month, Petrov would not let his age and his ailments prevent him from keeping a close watch on the regular season standings as the pairings for playoffs were being gradually defined. He continued to give interviews, which he talked eagerly of the relative chances of the competing clubs, and he continued to defend passionately his view that the national champion should be the team which finishes first in the regular season championship. He ensured that he spent his final weeks where he always wanted to be, in the thick of the discussions that surround the game of hockey. So he was a key member of the 64, 68, 72, and 76 Russian teams that won gold at the Olympics.
Yeah.
And they were, he was a huge part of that team. So big piece of Russian hockey history there.
Yes.
Passed away this past week. All right, let's move on to our picks of the week.
Yes, sir.
And you've got one concerning your beloved Pittsburgh Penguins.
Yeah. You won't hear me doing this very much, Wayne. Do you want me to go first, or do you want to go
ahead?
First?
Go ahead.
You want me to... Rarely. I think I've done it once before. Will I pick a Pittsburgh Penguin to get my pick of the week? I think the other one was one of the players, and I can't remember who it was, made his own root beer.
Oh, okay.
But this time I picked Mario Lemieux, and I'm sure a lot of you fans may have heard and seen what he did at the outdoor game this weekend, but I thought it was very touching, and especially from a legend like this. Mario Lemieux takes a fan and a cancer survivor for a skate. Super Mario lived up to his name Monday. As part of his 2017 Mario Lemieux fantasy camp, the former Pittsburgh Penguins great took Penguins fan and cancer survivor, and I hope I pronounced her name correctly, Lily Tarasewicz, for the skate of a lifetime at the outdoor rink at Heinz Field. It was a great experience, and he is really down to earth. But he also inspired me a lot, Tarasewicz said. Tarasewicz, 16 years old, was diagnosed with stage 3B Hodgkin's lymphoma in October of 2005, the same illness that Lemieux was diagnosed with on January 14, 1993, and fought during his playing career. After 4 months of intense chemotherapy and 14 rounds of radiation over 2 more months.
Wow.
She was ruled cancer-free May 18th, and I wrote this date down, May 18th, 2016. So it's coming up on a year that she has been cancer-free, and she is in our prayers. I think that's tremendous, because that is a lot of time spent in the doctor's office.
Yeah, it is.
Getting radiation treatments and chemotherapy. So we're praying for her that she has a good recovery. She has been cancer-free for 9 months now, Lily's mom, Melissa, said. The Tarasewitzes live in Chesterfield, South Carolina, but are a Penguins household thanks to Lily's dad, James, who had the unenviable task of rooting for the Penguins while growing up in Philadelphia. That must have been very, very difficult. I bet he got beat up at the bus stop.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Her wish, made possible by Make-A-Wish Foundation, Greater Pennsylvania and West Virginia, also included tickets to her first in-person NHL game, the 2017 Coors Light NHL Stadium Series between the Penguins and the Flyers this past Saturday, which the Penguins won 4-2. Lily, who had only skated once prior to Monday, nearly canceled the skating portion of her wish. But Lemieux insisted. After helping her put her skates on and walking her to the rink, Lemieux held her hands for the duration of the skate. He would not be denied the chance to do right by a fellow cancer survivor. So hats off to Mario Lemieux. Yep. That's a classy thing to do. And Lily Tarasegowicz and her family, we are continuing to hope and pray for the best for you.
Sure. Absolutely. All right. Well, mine is another feel-good story for concerning former Boston Bruin and Dallas Stars player Rich Peverley. I believe he played for Ottawa as well. Former NHL forward who went into cardiac arrest during a game raises funds for life-saving devices. This is the headline. This is an article from NHL.com written by Emily Benjamin. And the article reads, "A raw edge bites at Natalie Peverley's voice nearly 3 years later. Her voice thickens, becomes huskier as the memories and fears and anxieties rise once again to the surface. It has all taken time to process, and still the emotion is palpable. There was the cardiac arrest that eventually ended Rich Peverley's hockey career, the surgeries, the workouts that were ultimately in vain, the retirement, the way that life changed completely and irrevocably. There was the end of something, but there was the beginning too, and that was where Natalie's voice softens as she blinks back the lurking tears as she shares her pride. 2 years ago, after conversations with doctors, after reflections on what had happened and where their lives were going, Rich and Natalie created Pevs Protects, a charity that works to raise funds to purchase automated external defibrillators and to educate and train people of all ages using those devices. It works ultimately to save lives in the way that Rich Peverley's was saved. It's been a healing process for our family," Natalie said, "especially for our kids who look at something that was challenging for us to go through, but also to see what you can do to take a hard situation and make it a good one. It could have been way worse. We could have lost Richard. There's a lot of families around there that reached out to us, and they unfortunately lost somebody. They don't want a family to have to go through that. Their luck," yes, and they use that word, "came at a time of Rich's cardiac arrest, which occurred at American Airlines Center in Dallas during a game on March 10th, 2014, with his Dallas Stars teammates drawing attention to him on the bench and medical personnel on hand and an AED not far away. The plan now is to pass that luck along, to make sure, or to make more luck for more people. That started in Guelph on Friday with the second annual Pevs Protects fundraiser and continues in Dallas on Sunday when the Stars play the Boston Bruins. The Stars are hosting Pevs Protects Day for American Heart Association, and before the game there will be CPR demonstrations in Victory Plaza near the American Airlines Center. And, of course, the article goes on. If you want to read it, I've got a link in the show notes for it, talking about everything he's doing. But he's basically raising money to put these PEDs, or AEDs, I'm sorry, PEDs. that's a whole nother story. AEDs in places, particularly like I noticed a lot of hockey arenas are beginning to install them in the arena. I believe our local arena here has one. Of course, the place I play hockey is not just a hockey arena; it's also a full fitness center. They have weight room, aerobics and all that kind of stuff, and they got an Olympic-sized swimming pool as well at this complex. So, but they've got one. I believe they've got one at the front desk at this complex. But more and more arenas you're seeing are installing these things to obviously help people who need them. So, yes. And his Peverley's charity is raising money to buy more of these for more folks who need them, or more organizations, and that, for that matter, who need them. So, a great charity.
Yes, from
a former Boston Bruin.
Awesome.
Okay.
That was a great one.
All right. So that brings an end to this very long episode. Actually, it's not a whole lot longer than the last one.
No. I'm surprised.
We kind of rushed through everything else that wasn't transaction related. So we'll and we really didn't touch on the standings so much, and we'll get in more into that next week. This week was more about the transactions, so we'll update everybody on the standings next week. But with that in mind, as we close the show, also want to remind everybody you can give us any feedback you want to give us. You can email us at feedback@thehockeynuts.com. You can tweet us. I'm at Wayne Halley 9. Steve is at SBall504man. Our voicemail is at 919-960-1718. Our Facebook page is at facebook.com/thehockeynuts. Our YouTube channel is at thehockeynuts.com/YouTube. And coming up with anything else, you can find our podcast on all your places where podcasts are sold, including iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, etc. And also, we also want to remind everybody too that if you enjoy the show and listen, particularly if you listen to it every week and would like to support the show, we have affiliate links now where you can click on the link, and any purchases you make at those websites, a little bit of a kickback will come back to us to help us offset the cost of running the show. And those links can be found at our website at thehockeynuts.com. And, of course, we have Amazon and now Hockey Monkey as part of our affiliate program. So unless you have anything else, we're going to go ahead and end it.
Hey, Wayne, it's been a blast doing this show with you this week. I enjoyed the study and prep for it.
There was a lot. There was a lot to work this week.
Oh, God bless you, man. It's been a blast sitting here today with you, and I know you've been working hard. And my hat's off to you. You're a great guy, man. And I'm thankful to be doing this show with you. It's a blast each week. But this trade deadline edition was a lot of fun.
Yep, it was. And coming up in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be looking at obviously taking a closer look at the standings. I think next week what we'll do is we will go ahead and update our playoff predictions, because obviously the teams look a lot different now than they did in October. And we'll update where we think the way the playoffs will shake themselves out. And we'll also take a look at Las Vegas again. I don't know if we'll do it next week, but in the coming weeks before the end of the season, we'll take a look at the expansion draft on who we think is going to end up in Las Vegas now that all the teams are locked in for the rest of the season.
That's right.
So that was another thing I wanted to do today, but I didn't have time. There was just too much going on. So.
Yes, sir.
Was to take a look at the expansion draft. But we'll do that in the coming weeks. So, all right, with that, we'll go ahead and end it. And until next week, we'll see you later.